Hey everyone, it's time for another reaction video. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit interesting here. A lot of you are aware, of course, of a very famous debate that took place at this point 12 years ago between Bill Nye, the famous science communicator, and Ken Ham, one of the most prominent young Earth creationists out there in the zeitgeist. And so this is, a lot of you have seen this debate. I actually have not. I've never really fully watched it. I obviously was aware that it took place. I've seen little snippets, but I never actually sat down and watched it. So I figured this would be fun to go ahead and react to this. And the one thing that I do remember is that Bill got a lot of flack for agreeing to do this. Most academics were of the notion that, oh, if you debate these people, you lend their position credence and it helps them and all this stuff. And I understand that perspective, but anyone who knows me, you know that I don't think that way, right? My philosophy is that you engage with these charlatans, with these fallacious positions, and you go scorched earth and you humiliate them. I've done it to creationists. I've done it to flat earthers. I've done it to anti-vaxxers. That's the way I like to do things. So I would say I would defend Bill's decision to have done this debate. I don't really, I don't get a sense. I think that most of the talk afterwards was like, great, nobody changed their mind. No creationist, accepted evolution, and obviously nobody educated started believing in creationism because of what Ken says. So I don't think that this moved the needle one way or the other, but let's go ahead and watch it, and I'm going to react to both of the arguments and the rhetoric put forth by Bill and Ken. I have a feeling I'm not going to be terribly surprised. Hopefully there will be a couple of moments where I'm like, Bill, great job. That was a good, that was a good one there. And then, I mean, Ken, I know what he's going to say. There's not going to be anything in there that surprises me, that's for sure. But that's what we're going to do. And so this is quite long. It's got 11 million views. It's about 2.5 hours long. Which, if you know my reactions, would mean minimum 5 hours, 6 hours reaction. So we're not going to do the whole thing. I can do one of two things. It's about 10 o'clock right now. Kind of don't want to go more than an hour and a half, 2 hours. So we can either kind of do about half of it and then just call it quits, or I can pause it there and I can do a part 2 and finish it up. It depends. I mean, it's like, I think they'll have plenty to say, but it's just that all of these talking points are going to be so recycled. It runs the risk of not being quite as interesting as like something that maybe you haven't seen before that I'm reacting to. But you know, I react to creationists a lot. You guys seem to like it, and Ken Ham is. I've actually never done anything on Ken Ham just because it's so like we all know this guy. We all know the stuff he says. We all know about the Ark Encounter and all this stuff. But you know, it's a reaction. Wanted to fire one out for you guys this week. And this will be fun. So we are doing the Bill Nye debates Ken Ham on Answers in Genesis channel. They posted this, of course. I don't know how much money they made off of it. That would be the one argument I would say is just you let him make some money here. This should have been on a neutral on neutral grounds. But anyway, we're reacting to this debate, so let's get started right now. Before we dive into science denial of biblical proportions, let's introduce today's sponsor. While Ken Ham wants to fill public schools with indoctrinated children and drag humanity back to the Dark Ages, others favor a more rational, educated populace that is compatible with this modern information age. How can you help create the world of tomorrow? Let me introduce you to Boot.dev. Have you ever wanted to learn how to code? Boot.dev is for you. It's the easiest way to learn Python, SQL, Go, and TypeScript. And apart from being super simple and hands-on, it's also gamified into a fantasy theme where Boots the Bear Wizard helps you along your quest as you gain experience points while building real projects. It's like playing an RPG, but you're also getting ahead in life. I went through the first few lessons, and even though I'm pretty technologically incompetent, I found it intuitive and easy to progress. There are daily quests that allow you to earn rewards, community boss battles, and more. Try to top the leaderboard, complete every course, build asteroids, learn cryptography, and when you're done, get cracking on finding that new dream job so you can watch your salary skyrocket. All the content is free to read and watch, but you can also become a member to unlock interactive features with either a monthly or yearly plan. This gives you full solutions for all lessons and access to infinite practice in the training grounds, as well as certificates of completion. Use the QR code you see on your screen or go to boot.dev and use code Professor Dave to get 25% off your entire first year on the annual plan with a 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. That's boot.dev and use code Professor Dave to set off on your enchanted coding quest today.
Now let's welcome our debaters, Mr. Bill Nye and Mr. Ken Ham.
Very cordial and well dressed. Not It's a bit dissimilar to debates that I've done. Those of you who've seen seen some of my forays into debating creationists. But yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be very, very polite. But let's see how it goes.
We had a coin toss earlier to determine who would go first of these two men. The only thing missing was Joe Namath in a fur coat. But it went very well. Mr. Ham won the coin toss, and he opted to speak first. But first, let me tell you a little bit about both of these gentlemen. Mr. Nye's website describes him as a scientist, engineer, comedian, author, and inventor. Mr. Nye, as you may know, produced a number of award-winning TV shows, including the program he became so well known for, Bill Nye, the Science Guy. While working on the Science Guy show, Mr. Nye won 7 National Emmy Awards for writing, performing, and producing the show, won 18 Emmys in 5 years. In between creating the shows, he wrote 5 kids' books about science, including his latest title, Bill Nye's Great Big Book of Tiny Germs. Bill Nye is the host of 3 television series. His program, The 100 Greatest Discoveries, airs on the Science Channel. The Eyes of Nye airs on PBS stations across the country. He frequently appears on interview programs to discuss a variety of science topics. Mr. Nye serves as executive director of the Planetary Society, the world's largest space interest group. He is a graduate of Cornell with a Bachelor's of Science degree in mechanical engineering. Mr. Ken Ham is the president and co-founder of Answers in Genesis, a Bible-defending organization that upholds the authority of the scriptures from the very first verse. Mr. Ham is the man behind the popular high-tech Creation Museum where we're holding this debate. The museum has had 2 million visitors in 6 years and has attracted much of the world's media. The Answers in Genesis website is well trafficked with 2 million visitors alone last month. Mr. Ham is also a best-selling author, a much-in-demand speaker, and the host of a daily radio feature carried on 700-plus stations. This is his second public debate on evolution and creation. The first was at Harvard in the 1990s. Mr. Ham is a native of Australia. He earned a bachelor's degree in applied science with an emphasis in environmental biology from the Queensland Institute of Technology, as well as a diploma of education at the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia. And now, Mr. Ham, you opted to go first, so you will be first with your 5-minute opening statement.
Well, good evening. I know that not everyone watching this debate will necessarily agree with what I have to say, but I'm an Aussie and live over here in America, and they tell me I have an accent, and so it doesn't matter what I say. Some people tell me, we just like you here saying it. So I hope you enjoy me saying it anyway. Well, the debate topic is this: is creation a viable model of origins in today's modern scientific era? You know, when this was first announced on the internet, there are lots of statements like this one from the Richard Dawkins Foundation: scientists should not debate creationists, period. And this one from one of the discovery.com websites: should scientists debate creationists? You know, right?
I find it very telling, by the way. It's like he's going straight to like the victim complex. Like, you're here to debate like science versus biblical framework for origins, and you're jumping straight to like, they don't want to debate me. Everyone said nobody. Like, he's just whining immediately. It's incredible.
Right here, I believe there's a gross misrepresentation in our culture. We're seeing people in being indoctrinated to believe that creationists can't be scientists. I believe it's all a part of secularists hijacking the word science. I want you to meet a modern-day scientist who is a biblical creationist.
Creationists can be scientists. It just ideally doesn't overlap with whatever their expertise is. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, creationists don't make very good scientists. But of course, okay, Stuart Burgess. So we're gonna get an argument from authority right off the bat here. Like, see, here's a guy, one guy. So it's totally valid.
My name is Stuart Burgess. I'm a professor of engineering design at Bristol University in the UK. My name is Stuart Burgess. I'm a professor of engineering design at Bristol University in the UK. I have published over 130 scientific papers on the science of design in engineering and biological systems. From my research work, I have found that the scientific evidence fully supports creationism as the best explanation to origins. I've also designed major parts of spacecraft launched by ESA and NASA.
So here's a biblical creationist who's a scientist who's also an inventor.
This guy says, right? This one guy says, shit is complicated, so designer, right? So it's true. Like, this is what we're gonna get the whole time. Is just arguments from incredulity, arguments from authority. He's not going to very seriously engage in the objective threads of evidence that support not just evolution, but obviously we're going to be talking about Big Bang cosmology and like an old Earth, all the geological evidence for an old Earth. It's just going to be this guy says. Well, that guy says. How about the 100,000 on the other side? 100,000 times more true, then, right? If that's what you're holding up as evidence, as this guy said. I don't know.
And I want young people to understand that. You know, the problem, I believe, is this. We need to define terms correctly. We need to define creation, evolution in regard to origins, and we need to define science. And in this opening statement, I want to concentrate on dealing with the word science. I believe the word science has been hijacked by secularists. Now, what is science? Well, the origin of the word comes from the classical Latin scientia, which means to know. And if you look up a dictionary, it'll say science means state of knowing, knowledge. But there's different types of knowledge, and I believe this is where the confusion lies. There's experimental or observational science, as we call it. That's using the scientific method, observation, measurement, experiment, testing. That's what produces our technology, computers, spacecraft, jet planes, smoke detectors, looking at DNA, antibiotics, medicines and vaccines. You see, all scientists, whether creationists or evolutionists, actually have the same observational or experimental science. And it doesn't matter whether you're a creationist or an evolutionist, you can be a great scientist. For instance, here's an atheist who is a great scientist, Craig Venter, one of the first researchers to sequence the human genome. Or Dr. Raymond Damadian. He is a man who invented the MRI scanner and revolutionized medicine. He's a biblical creationist. But I want us to also understand molecules to man evolution belief has nothing to do with developing technology. You see, when we're talking about origins, we're talking about the past. We're talking about our origins. We weren't there. You can't observe that, whether it's molecules to man evolution or whether...
Okay, yeah, so it's just you weren't there. You didn't see it. You weren't there, so you can't know. It's not observational. Well, yes, it fucking is. We observe evidence. All of the data that he's going to pretend is historical or whatever the fuck he's saying is observation-based, right? We can observe geological strata. We can observe the fossil record. We can observe radiometric dating data. Those are observations, and we can use those to create models that make predictions, that make quantifiable predictions, or all different kinds of predictions. Like biogeography is one where it's like, hey, we found these fossils over here, so we're making a prediction that we should find these fossils over there in that other part of the world because those continents used to be connected. And then we look, and then we do. You can't get more scientific than that. Is having these predictions validated, right? We make these observations and we make models that make predictions. That's how science works. So he's definitely doing this thing of just like, oh, I can like look at a bacterium in a microscope. That's cool. That's observational. So that's fine. But we can't do a thing in the past, right? Something that if you didn't watch it, you can't know anything about it, which is just complete bullshit at face value. Like, how do you think forensic science works? Like, do you think that cops just like show up at a crime scene and go, "Did anybody see what happened?" Like, no. Ah, fuck. Pack it up. Let's go. No, you collect evidence, and then you can generate a theory, what you would probably call a theory. I'm sure I don't know if they do or don't, but you can create an explanation, a model that correlates all this data, right? You have these fingerprints over there. You have this broken thing over there. You have a gunshot over there. You have the victim over there in a particular position. Then you have the autopsy data. You have all this stuff, and then you create an explanation, right? You say, okay, I think it was this person that did this in this way, and that would explain why the bullet came from that angle, and it would explain why that print was there and that thing was there and all of this other stuff. And then that can even make predictions. And we're like, if that's true, well, then I bet we would find this other piece of evidence. And then you do, and that corroborates what you think is the case. So that is the case with every area of geology, biology, all the areas of science that he wants to deny just because it happened in the past. You make models that make predictions, and then we get more observations that corroborate those models that predicted those observations. So it's a complete false start. He wants to redefine science to mean something completely different from what it is, just so that he can go, science I don't like isn't true because I say so. That's basically it.
It's a creation account. When you're talking about the past, we like to call that origins or historical science, knowledge concerning the past. Here at the Creation Museum, we make no apology about the fact that our origins or historical science actually is based upon the biblical account of origins.
That makes it religion and not science, you moron. You're the one trying to co-opt the word. Science has been hijacked by secularists. No, it's just people who know what science is. You're the one trying to hijack it to make it synonymous with religion. If you're getting facts out of biblical scripture, that's antithetical to science. That's just a book says a thing, therefore it's true because I say so. That is the exact opposite of what science is. Like, I just don't understand anybody who can fall for this. I mean, there are religious scientists, but they're just not biblical literalists almost ever, and they just accept them as non-overlapping magisteria, as we would say, but as Gould would say. But we get our origins or historical science from the Bible. What are you smoking? What are you smoking? You have blind faith in religious scripture. That's antithetical to science.
Now, when you research science textbooks being used in public schools, what we found is this. By and large, the origins or historical science is based upon man's ideas about the past, for instance, the ideas of Darwin. And our research has found that
science textbooks teach science. What an insane concept.
That public school textbooks are using the same word science for observational science and historical science. They arbitrarily define science as naturalism and outlaw the supernatural. They present molecules to man evolution as fact. They are imposing, I believe, the religion of naturalism or atheism on generations of students.
Yeah, so I mean, this is they all have the same playbook, right? Discovery Institute tries to appear more sophisticated than this, than by accepting an old Earth for the most part and things like that. But it's the same playbook, right? Naturalism, materialism is the other word that they like to rage against, and they just whine about science not resorting to supernatural explanations, even though that's just not what science does, right? Science is the study of the natural world. It's a study of what is observable, quantifiable, measurable. That's what it is. So when you pretend that it should be doing something other than that, you're just admitting that you don't know what science is. And he's definitely admitting that he doesn't know what it is. So this is the real hijacking, right? This completely fallacious delineation between observational and historical science. Everything that doesn't mean anything, right? Something that has happened in the past, we collect evidence about it and we develop models to explain it and make other predictions. That is how science works. Everything about astronomy, geology, it all works this way. It's all science. And science is not a religion, no matter how much religious people want to pretend that it is. They're just trying to even the playing field and bring science down to the level of religion epistemologically in terms of the baselessness of the worldview. And it's very pathetic.
You see, I assert that the word science has been hijacked by secularists in teaching evolution to force the religion of naturalism on generations of kids. Secular evolutionists teach that all life...
It's all, won't somebody please think of the children? They always throw in the kids there. It's like, we got to save the kids from the evil.
...developed by natural processes from some primordial form, that man is just an evolved animal, which has great bearing on how we view life and death. For instance, as Bill states...
It's very hard to accept for many of us that when you die, it's over.
But you see, the Bible gives a totally different account of origins, of who we are, where we came from, the meaning of life and our future. That through one man sin entered the world and death through sin, but that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, whoever believes in him should not perish and have everlasting life.
He's now delivering a sermon during a science debate. And he actually played that clip from Bill as though it was some kind of own, when he's actually just exposing, right? He's basically just saying, we know that everyone's afraid to die. We tell people that they don't die or that there's life after death. That's why people get ensnared by this worldview. And that's all there is to it. You know what I mean? Fear of mortality is the primary driver towards religiosity, I think, whether people are conscious of it or not. And I think that there's people who approach their religiosity with more rationality than others, I guess one could say. I mean, the less science you deny, the more rational you are. So old Earth creationists are at least more rational than young Earth creationists. Deists that accept all of science and don't subscribe to creationism are more rational than any kind of creationist. But given the complete lack of any kind of evidence for any deity in general, and then certainly not the deity of any of the major religions, what is the rationale there? I think it's fear of mortality. I think it's just, wouldn't it be neat if death wasn't the end? So I will subscribe to the worldview that tells me that it isn't the end. For God so loved the world. Oh, and then this is the other one, right? That's the unique part about Christianity. Everyone's a sinner, right? Everyone needs this religion because everyone's a sinner. This is not something that you can choose to come to or not. You need it. Everyone is a horrible, evil person simply for being born, and you need our help. You need our help for salvation, or you'll go to the bad fiery place. My God, we're still engaging with this as a species.
So, is creation a viable model of origins in today's modern scientific era? I say the creation-evolution debate is a conflict between two philosophical worldviews based on two different accounts of origins or science beliefs, and creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era.
And that is time. I have the unenviable job of being the timekeeper here. So I'm like the referee in football that you don't like, but I will periodically, if either one of our debaters runs over on anything, I will stop them in the name of keeping it fair for all. Mr. Ham, thank you for your comments. Now it's Mr. Nye's turn for a 5-minute opening statement. Mr. Nye.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I very much appreciate you including me in your facility here. Now, looking around the room, I think I see just one bow tie. Is that right? Just one. I'm telling you, one should try. Oh, yes, two. That's great. I started wearing bow ties when I was young in high school. My father showed me, his father showed him. And there's a story associated with this, which I find remarkable. My grandfather was in the Rotary, and he attended a convention in Philadelphia. And even in those days, at the turn of the last century, people rented tuxedos. and the tuxedo came with a bow tie, untied bow tie. So he didn't know how to tie it, so wasn't sure what to do, but he just took a chance. He went to the hotel room next door, knocked on the door, excuse me, can you help me tie my tie? And the guy said, sure, lie down on the bed. So my grandfather, he wanted to have the tie on, wasn't sure what he was getting into, so he is said to have lain on the bed, and the guy tied a perfect bow tie knot, and quite reasonably, my grandfather said, thank you. Why'd I have to lie down on the bed? The guy said, I'm an undertaker. It's really the only way I know how to do it. Now, that story was presented to me as a true story. It may or may not be, but it gives you something to think about, and it's certainly something to remember. So here tonight, we're going to have two stories, and we can compare Mr. Ham's story to the story from what I will call the outside, from mainstream science. The question tonight is, does Ken Ham's creation model hold up?
I just, I'm going to try to not be hard on Bill, of course. This is a difficult task, but was that really worth the payoff, that joke? And then also framing it as two stories. Come on, man. It's not two stories. It's one story and the entire body of empirical science. But, okay, let's do it. Come on. Let's dig into it. Let's go, Bill.
Is it viable? So let me ask you all, what would you be doing if you weren't here tonight? That's right. You'd be home watching CSI. CSI Petersburg. Is that coming? I think it's coming. And on CSI, there is no distinction made between historical science and observational science. These are constructs unique to Mr. Ham. We don't normally have these anywhere in the world except here.
Okay, great. Now we're getting into it, right? So this is exactly what I said. Just like if you're on a crime, this is the crime scene is the perfect thing because everybody understands. Like you didn't see the crime, but we're going to investigate it and figure it out anyway. So this is a great place to start. I like this.
Natural laws that applied in the past apply now. That's why they're natural laws. That's why we embrace them. That's how we made all these discoveries that enabled all this remarkable technology. So CSI is a fictional show, but it's based absolutely on real people doing real work. When you go to a crime scene and find evidence, you have clues about the past. And you trust those clues, and you embrace them, and you move forward to convict somebody. Mr. Ham and his followers have this remarkable view of a worldwide flood that somehow influenced everything that we observe in nature. A 500-foot wooden boat, 8 zookeepers for 14,000 individual animals, every land plant in the world underwater for a full year. I ask us all, That's
a good point, too. That's not often... I think in my my big guide to debunking creationism, obviously we talk about the flood quite a bit, and I'm pretty sure I bring up that because I talk about the Ark myth a lot. But that's true, is like, what about plants, right? There's so many plants that how are they all here? They all would have died. And then like freshwater versus saltwater, aquatic life, like there's just so many anomalies that are, just so many things that don't fit, that are never talked about by the creationist side. But obviously the number of animals and then all these other things.
Really reasonable. You'll hear a lot about the Grand Canyon, I imagine also, which is a remarkable place, and it has fossils. And the fossils in the Grand Canyon are found in layers. There is not a single place in the Grand Canyon where the fossils of one type of animal cross over into the fossils of another. In other words, when there was a big flood on the earth, you would expect drowning animals to swim up to a higher level. Not any one of them did. Not a single one. If you could find evidence of that, my friends, you could change the world.
Yeah, and believe it or not, creationists do try to come up with ad hoc reasoning to combat this very clear fact about sorting, about the way the fossils are sorted, and they try to come up with arguments based on density or just other physical characteristics. It just does not work. That alone really truly disproves the flood or any of these kinds of myths. because it would be true, right? There are these there are these strata that all over the world contain these very specific organisms. You do not see any trilobites in the strata, in the more recent strata that contain things that are a lot more closely related to what's alive today. And you do not see any of those fossils in those very deep strata where all the trilobites are and the other Cambrian era stuff. It absolutely does not make any sense other than those fossils being formed slowly as those strata formed over millions of years. It just does not work. You either have to prey upon the ignorance of the viewer, not knowing how the strata work, not knowing how sedimentary rock forms, not knowing how many types of fossils we have found and where. They have to not know any of this stuff in order to fall for some kind of myth of everything being really rapidly deposited all at once. It does not work. It defies everything we know about geology and other fields of science.
Now, I just want to remind us all, there are billions of people in the world who are deeply religious, who get enriched, who have a wonderful sense of community from their religion. They worship together, they eat together, they live in their communities and enjoy each other's company. Billions of people. But these same people do not embrace the extraordinary view that the earth is somehow only 6,000 years old. That is unique. And here's my concern. What keeps the United States ahead, what makes the United States a world leader, is our technology, our new ideas, our innovations. If we continue to eschew science, eschew the process, and try to divide science into observational science and historic science, we are not going to move forward. We will not embrace natural laws. We will not make discoveries. We will not invent and innovate and stay ahead. So if you ask me if Ken Ham's creation model is viable, I say no. It is absolutely not viable. So stay with us over the next period, and you can compare my evidence to his. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, a dash of urgency at the end there. Obviously, Christian nationalism and fundamentalism in general is a gigantic problem. It's infested the government. America being a leader scientifically, this was 12 years ago, but kiss that goodbye. Under Trump and RFK, we are no longer the leaders, the global leaders in science. That era is over. I don't know if we'll ever get it back. Maybe we're not meant to, but yeah. So all right, pretty good. I would have liked to. I mean, it's just an opening statement, but and those were pretty short. I don't know if there's like 5 minutes or something, but I think both of them kind of wasted a little bit of time. But yeah, I don't know. I like that he did the CSI thing. It's like, you guys, come on. What is this historical science crap? Doesn't mean anything. We make observations. We get clues about what happened. That's how science works. We get clues about what happened and make models to figure it out. Let's do it.
Very nice start by both of our debaters here. And now each one will offer a 30-minute illustrated presentation to fully offer their case for us to consider. Mr. Ham, you're up.
I gotta say, I hate this format. This guy's gonna talk for half an hour now. Wow. Oh man, it's like earlier what I said that I engage these people in debate. One caveat is that it must be majority directly interacting open discussion sections, because Ken is going to lie his ass off. And the only way that this kind of exchange becomes worth it is if you can interact in real time and just cut through all of the rhetorical devices, cut through whatever cherry picking or straw manning or whatever they're doing dishonestly, because every single creationist, every single apologist will always be disingenuous, will always be a bad faith actor in these kinds of interactions. And the only way to make this a favorable outcome for science, for whoever's defending science, is to identify those tactics in real time, call them out in real time, and press them and humiliate them, right? Whatever straw man it is, and then they're going to gish gallop, they're going to change this up. Nope, right back here. Answer the question. Answer the question. Answer the question until they become visibly distressed and then either get angry or they start trying to insult you. Just whatever it is, it just becomes very transparent that they don't know what they're talking about, that they're off their script, and that's the only way that this works. So half an hour we got to listen to this guy. Let's see if we can just get through that. I may have to stop after that. Okay, let's do it.
Well, the debate topic was, is creation a viable model of origins in today's modern scientific era? And I made this statement at the end of my opening statement. Creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era. And I said, what we need to be doing is actually defining our terms, and particularly three terms: science, creation, and evolution. Now, I discussed the meaning of the word science and what is meant by experimental or observational science briefly, and that both creationists and evolutionists can be great scientists, for instance. I mentioned Craig Venter, a biologist. He's an atheist, and he's a great scientist. He was one of the first researchers to sequence the human genome. I also mentioned Dr. Raymond Damadian, who actually invented the MRI scanner. I want you to meet a biblical creationist who is a scientist and inventor.
Hi, my name is Dr. Raymond Damadian. I am a young Earth creation scientist and believe that God created the world in 6 24-hour days, just as recorded in the book of Genesis. By God's grace and the devoted prayers of my godly mother-in-law, I invented the MRI scanner in 1969.
Yeah, and what the fuck does that have to do with geology or biology or any of the areas of science that absolutely do not support and completely contradict young Earth creationism? You are just like James Tour, right? James Tour can make his little nano cars, and he can make his graphene. Has fucking nothing to do with origins. Nothing whatsoever. Has nothing to do with the origin of the Earth or the origin of life or the origin of the universe or any of that shit. So propping him up is like, see, this guy, blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't work. Find me a geologist, a credible geologist who believes the Earth is 6,000 years old. You can't do it. You can't do it. Find me a credible biological anthropologist that doesn't accept the evolution of hominid species to result in Homo sapiens. You can't do it. It doesn't work. The data does not support the the rejection of these fields outright. You can't do it. And this is all Ken has, is this fucking parade of, look at this one guy. Look at this one objectively wrong guy who did a thing that has nothing to do with the topic today. He's a smart guy. One smart guy believes it. Like, this is his argument. It's incredible. Who is falling for this?
The idea that scientists who believe the Earth is 6,000 years old cannot do real science is simply wrong.
Well, he's most adamant about that. And actually, he revolutionized medicine, and he's a biblical creationist. And I encourage children to follow people like that and make them their heroes. Let me introduce you to another biblical creation scientist.
My name is Danny Faulkner. I received my PhD in astronomy from Indiana University. For 26 and a half years, I was professor at the University of South Carolina, Lancaster, where I hold the rank of Distinguished Professor Emeritus. Upon my retirement from the university in January of 2013, I joined the research staff at Answers in Genesis. I'm a stellar astronomer.
The research staff. Yeah, that's a little bit of a misnomer, isn't it, buddy? And tell me, how many papers were you publishing on the universe being 6,000 years old or whatever the fuck you believe when you were a scientist? Let me guess, 0? Oh, you saved that for your research at Answers in Genesis, which is you writing blog posts full of lies? Yeah, good job.
That means my primary interest is stars, but I'm particularly interested in the study of eclipsing binary stars. And I've published many articles in the astronomy literature, places such as the Astrophysical Journal, the Astronomical Journal, and the Observatory. There is nothing in observational astronomy that contradicts a recent creation.
I also mentioned Dr. Stuart Burgess.
Except literally everything. Except literally everything in astronomy. So great. You found one scientist who is a clown in his own field. That was a bit unexpected. You don't see too many of those. Kurt Wise maybe would be another one. But yeah, come on, man. What are you talking about? Everything about, the recession velocities of galaxies, the cosmic microwave background radiation. This is a common one, but yeah, they always have ad hoc explanations, but like the light that is reaching us from these very distant things that are millions or even billions of light years away indicates that they have to have existed for that long. So they say, no, God created the universe and he created the light in transit so that it would get here, right? It's this many billions of light years away, but the light from it was like almost to us. It was almost to us when he created. So basically, you're saying that your God is a manipulative, deceptive piece of shit who created a universe that appears to everyone who knows what the fuck they're talking about to be 13 billion years old, but it's not. So let's say that's true. Let's say that's true. Why would I worship such a fucking asshole? Why would I worship that guy? He's a jerk. I don't want to know from him, right? That's what you have to end up believing, is that your God is tricking us into thinking everything is older than it is. And that's not something an all-loving deity would do, so Christian God debunked. Sorry.
As professor of design, engineering design at Bristol University in England. Now, he designed a double-action worm gear set for the 3 hinges of the robotic arm on a very expensive satellite. And if that had not worked, if that gear set had not worked, that whole satellite would have been useless. Yet Dr. Burgess is a biblical creationist who believes just as I believe. Now,
he built a thing. He built a thing with engineering. Therefore, all of geology and astronomy and biology are wrong. This is an argument. This is a serious thing coming out of his dumb mouth. I can't even begin to fathom.
Think about this for a moment. Are scientists like Dr. Burgess, who believe in creation, just as I do, a small minority in the scientific world? But let's see what he says about scientists believing in creation.
I find that many of my colleagues in academia are sympathetic to the creationist viewpoint, including biologists. However, they are often afraid to speak out because of the criticisms they would get from the media and atheist lobby.
I agree, that's a real problem today.
No, it's not. No, it's not. There is no atheist lobby. It's just scientists that would judge a scientist for holding an anti-scientific view. It's not that weird. Yeah, atheist lobby. This trope of the cabal of angry atheists, right? We're all so angry and belligerent, and we'll silence you. Cancel culture, right? This is how you trigger the right, is you make up some bullshit about cancel culture. No, it's just you're wrong and dumb. That's all there is to it. And people don't even. I mean, it's like you might get snickers or made fun of. When you go to a conference or something, but other than that, who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody's like, we got burn them. We got to burn them. Like, it's just not happening. You're fabricating all this.
We need to have freedom to be able to speak on these topics. I just want to say, by the way, that non-Christian scientists, I should say, non-Christian scientists are really borrowing from the Christian worldview anyway to carry out their experimental or observational science. Think about it. When they're doing observational science using the scientific method, they have to assume the laws of logic, they have to assume the laws of nature, they have to assume the uniformity of nature. I mean, think about it. If the universe came about by natural processes, where'd the laws of logic come from? Did they just pop into existence? Are we in a stage now where we only have half logic? So you see, I have a question for Bill Nye. How do you account for the laws of logic and the laws of nature from a naturalistic worldview that excludes the existence of God?
How do you explain the existence of your God? You're not solving anything. You're wondering how all of these how a logically consistent, a logically coherent universe exists. You're uncomfortable with a universe existing without cause, so you are manufacturing an infinitely more complex entity, a deity, that somehow exists without cause. And this is your solution to the problem, right? Any deity that you're positing has within itself a complexity sufficient to devise these laws of logic. Where the fuck is your explanation for where that came from? No, you absolve yourself of having to explain that. No, God, no, it's fine. God was always there. Whatever, blah 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 blah. It's always the same. It's always the same, right? It's totally okay to accept that cosmology isn't 100% complete. We know so much. We know an incredible amount. Starting at t 10 to the negative 36 seconds, a little bit, and then around, I don't know, I think 10 to the negative 12 electroweek epoch, like onwards, we have a very firm grasp about how the universe progressed. Okay, at t equals 0, we don't know what happened, right? So if you want to believe in a deity, that's fine. But you're just kicking the can down the road. You're not solving anything, but in fact you're making the problem worse. If your philosophical position is to wonder how did it come to be, how did the thing blah blah blah, you should be an atheist, because it's the simplest situation, right? And we can definitely, like, I'm very sympathetic. Yeah, like, why does anything exist? That's a very stonery, we've all been 18 and had that thought of just like, wait a minute, why is anything here? It's crazy. But God does not solve that problem. Why do you create the God and then stop? You stop asking that question. Why the fuck does the deity exist? It's a much bigger problem than why the universe would exist. And not a single creationist can get this through their skulls, that you're not solving this problem. Do we have mysteries to solve? Absolutely. And it's a very real chance that we will never ever know every detail about how the universe came into existence. Are there other universes where all this other stuff? But God does not solve that problem. And by the way, a logically consistent universe isn't that weird. Like the idea that the laws of physics are the same all over the universe, it's not that weird. It's just kind of like the lowest energy state that a universe could be. You know what I mean? Like, why would it arbitrarily have different laws of physics in different places or at different times? That would be indicative. I think I actually think that would be more indicative of a deity, to be honest. If the laws of physics were arbitrarily different at different places at different times, that would, to me, make it seem like, okay, well, there's a deity that like is twisting a knob and go, okay, now the strong nuclear force is going to be a little bit stronger now because I say so. We're going to do that, No, the fact that this is all uniform and logically coherent, logically consistent, that's what you would expect out of a natural system. So, I don't know. This kind of God, this God of the gaps that lives right in t equals 0, if you want to believe in that God, that's fine. That's very unoffensive to me. And I think that most rational people who believe in God probably believe in that kind of God and then accept the explanations that science have provided since then. There's no evidence for it. It definitely doesn't solve any problems. That's a personal spiritual choice that anyone is free to make. You definitely can't then turn around and try to push religious scripture on, or try to, erode the separation of church and state because of that belief. But there's just nothing here. There's nothing here. Your God does not solve this problem. It only makes it worse. End of story.
Now, in my opening statement, I also discussed a different type of science or knowledge, origins or historical science. See, again, there's a confusion here. There's a misunderstanding here.
Yeah, there sure as fuck is. It's you pretending that there's two different kinds of science. It's all observational. Whatever the fuck you call historical science is all based on observations. We're observing geological strata and fossils and genetics, DNA evidence, all of this stuff. And we use that to construct to construct phylogenies or other different kinds of models, and with those models we make predictions. And then when you get new data, if that data fits very nicely into existing models, that's corroborating the model. And I'm sorry, you can go all the way back to Darwin, and people love to say, creationists love to say, Darwin said that this would all hinge on us finding transitional fossils, and we didn't find any. It's like, motherfucker, that was almost 200 years ago. We have found millions of transitional fossils in that time. And so here's this model of common descent, and this idea of a tree of life. And we have since then been filling in all of these branches. And, obviously certain phylogenies are in flux in terms of the minutia at the species and genus level. I mean, actually, almost at every level, we do kind of rearrange things a little bit. But when we keep finding new organisms and all this new data, and it keeps sorting into this tree of life immaculately, that is corroborating what Darwin said. I mean, we're just so far beyond that. That's why it's not taken serious. That's why nobody's taken seriously in biology who rejects the idea of common descent and a tree of life. You're just not taken seriously, just like young Earth creationists cannot be taken seriously in geology, because geological processes do not allow for this shit to be 6,000 years old. If you understand how sedimentary rock forms painstakingly slowly as the sediment builds like this and makes the strata, that cannot be done quickly. It cannot be done quickly. There cannot have been a global flood that then deposited a bunch of sediment to create the Grand Canyon or something like this. It does not happen that way. If it happened that way, beaches wouldn't exist. What the hell are beaches? It would all compact rapidly and create new sedimentary rock like that. Because that's what Ken has to believe, is that this shit can happen overnight practically. I mean, really, genuinely within years, a few years. He believes that these kinds of structures can form, but they don't. We don't see that forming. So I'm sorry, Ken, your historical science does not match observation. We do not see these geological structures forming in the way that you must believe that they did. They don't do that. So all of this shit, it's ridiculous.
People, by and large, have not been taught to look at what you believe about the past as different to what you're observing in the present. You don't observe the past directly. Even when you think about the creation account, I mean, we can't observe God creating. We can't observe the creation of Adam and Eve. We admit that. We're willing to admit our beliefs about the past. But see, what you see in the present is very different. Even some public school textbooks, actually, well, they sort of acknowledge the difference between historical and observational science.
No, they don't, because that's not a thing. And what are you pretending is different? Give us an example, Ken.
Here is an earth science textbook that's used in public schools, and we read this. In contrast to physical geology, the aim of historical geology is to understand Earth's long history. And then they make the statement, historical geology, so we're talking about historical science, tries to establish a timeline of the vast number of physical and biological changes that have occurred in the past. We study physical geology before historical geology because we first must understand how Earth works before we try to unravel its past. In other words,
great. Okay, so they cherry-picked one frickin' book that has something vaguely what they're trying to say. Yeah, all this is saying is we have to know how rocks form in order to discuss how they have formed. Okay, fine. But it's still all completely observation-based, right? You're just observing rock formation and then extrapolating it. That's it.
Words, we observe things in the present, and then, okay, we're assuming that that's always happened in the past, and we're going to try and figure out how this happened. See, there is a difference between what you observe and what happened in the past. Let me illustrate it this way. If Bill Nye and I went to the Grand Canyon, we could agree that that's a Coconino sandstone in the Hermit Shale, and there's the boundary. They're sitting one on top of the other. We could agree on that. But do you know what we would disagree on? I mean, we could even analyze the minerals and agree on that. But we would disagree on how long it took to get there. But see, none of us saw the sandstone or the shale being laid down. There's a supposed 10 million year gap there, but I don't see a gap. But that might be different to what Bill Nye would see. But see, there's a difference.
So go watch strata forming in real time. Go watch them forming in real time right now. Do you see them forming rapidly? You don't, because they can't do that. It takes a long time for sedimentary rock to form. So this distinction does not exist. Right, we can look at what's happening today. Of course, we can extrapolate that. Right, if you want to take the position that you can, that there is no logical consistency, that the rate of radioactive decay or sedimentary rock formation or speciation or any of these things took dramatically different times in the past. What is your basis for that assumption, right? I know what it is. It's an ad hoc assumption to try to aggressively force science to fit your predetermined religious worldview, but there's no logical basis for it. You're just saying, well, it probably took a different amount of time so that I can still be right. That's what you're doing. We can observe all these geological processes right now, and there's absolutely zero basis to believe that any of these things, tree ring formation or rock formation or any of this kind of stuff would, or radioactive decay, that it would take that the rates would be different at any other time in history. There's no basis for it. You just don't have it.
The difference between what you actually observe directly and then your interpretation in regard to the past. When I was at the Goddard Space Center a number of years ago, I met creationists and evolutionists who were both working on the Hubble telescope. They agreed on how to build the Hubble telescope. You know what they disagreed on? Well, they disagreed on how to interpret the data the telescope obtained in regard to the age of the universe. And, we could go on and talk about lots of other similar sorts of things. For instance,
what data did they disagree on? What interpretations were there? It's a little vague, buddy. It's totally acceptable for scientists to examine new data and have different models, different competing models and different opinions about how to interpret that data. But none of them go, let's ignore all of this and magic from the Bible is real. What are you talking about? You're pointing at the scientific process to pretend that science would be wrong. That means nothing.
I've heard Bill Nye talk about how a smoke detector works using the radioactive element americium. And you know what? I totally agree with him on that. We agree how it works. We agree how radioactivity enables that to work. But if you're then going to use radioactive elements and talk about the age of the Earth, you've got a problem because you weren't there. We've got to understand parent elements, daughter elements, and so on. We could agree whether you're a creationist or evolutionist on the technology to put the rover on Mars, but we're going to disagree on how to interpret the origin of Mars. I mean, there are some people that believe there was even a global flood on Mars and there's no liquid water on Mars. But we're going to disagree maybe on our interpretation of origins, and you can't prove either way because, not from an observational science perspective, because we've only got the present. Creationists and evolutionists both work on medicines and vaccines. You see, it doesn't matter whether you're a creationist or an evolutionist, all scientists have the same experimental or observational science. So I have a question for Bill Nye. Can you name one piece of technology that could only have been developed starting with a belief in molecules to man evolution? Now, here's another important...
You can't just isolate it like that, right? We're talking about an aspect of our understanding of these fields, chemistry, biology, etc. So all of it is intertwined. So whatever new thing that we do in bioinformatics or materials science or any of this stuff is informed by our understanding of chemistry, biochemistry, biology, right, molecular biology, and all of that is intertwined. You can't, like, science isn't a buffet. You can't go, I'll take this, but I don't like that part. These are all discoveries and knowledge that has been developed by probing the natural world. It's all connected, right? You can't do it piecemeal. So it's a complete straw man, right? To be like, what about abiogenesis and evolutionary biology informs our the development of vaccines, right? Well, even there, I mean, evolutionary principles affect inform our understanding of viruses, right? Viruses aren't alive, but they have a genome, and there are mutations, and viruses change, and so that informs our understanding of epidemiology, and therefore vaccinology. So it doesn't even work. Like it's a straw man, and you can answer it. Right? There's so much about medical technology that is informed by our understanding of genetics and evolutionary biology. So epic fail everywhere.
In fact, creationists and evolutionists all have the same evidence. Bill Nye and I have the same Grand Canyon. We don't disagree on that. We will have the same fish fossil. This is one from the Creation Museum. The same dinosaur skeletons, the same animals, the same humans, the same DNA, the same radioactive decay elements that we see. We have the same universe. Actually, we all have the same evidences. It's not the evidences that are different.
Stop saying evidences. Did Ken invent this? Where did this come from? I need to know where evidences came from. Who the fuck started saying it? Maybe it was Ken. God damn it. Like, he said evidence so many times, and now he's doing evidences. This is an adorable cartoon, by the way. Holy crap, what a cartoon. Ken and Bill there. Somebody whipped this up nice and special over at Answers in Genesis just for them. And look at that. They're picking from the earth. They've got a giraffe and a dino, a T-Rex skeleton, and each has a DNA strand. Oh, it's so adorable.
It's a battle over the same evidence in regard to how we interpret the past. And you know why that is? Because it's really a battle over worldviews and starting points. It's a battle over philosophical worldviews and starting points, but the same evidence.
Yes, it's a debate about starting points. You start from ancient religious scripture that was written by clueless goat herders that had no fucking idea what anything was or how anything worked. And science starts from an empirical standpoint of observation, experimentation, creating models, verifying or falsifying predictions. Yes, you're comparing religion and science in a debate about the veracity of scientific principles. So you lose immediately. You are admitting that you are not coming to the table with science, but rather religion, religious scripture. You are disqualifying yourself. You're very bad at this.
Now, I admit my starting point is that God is the ultimate authority. But if someone doesn't accept that, then man has to be the ultimate authority. And that's really the difference when it comes down to it. You see, I've been emphasizing the difference between historical origin science, knowledge about the past when you weren't there, and we need to understand that we weren't there. Or experimental or observational science, using your five senses in the present, the scientific method, what you can directly observe, test, repeat. There's a big difference between those two. And that's not what's being taught in our public schools, and that's why kids aren't being taught to think critically and correctly about the origins issue. But it's also important to understand...
If you want to learn about God, go to church. Has no fucking place in school, dude. Has no place in science class. God went blah, 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 and, flippity flappity flew, and the universe tumbled out. That's not fucking science. That's religion. You can do that in church. You have freedom of religion, and we have freedom from religion.
When talking about creation evolution, both involve historical science and observational science. You see, the role of observational science is this. It can be used to confirm or otherwise one's historical science based on one's starting point. Now, when you think about the debate topic and what I affirmed concerning creation, if our origins or historical science based on the Bible's account of origins is true, then there should be predictions from this that we can test using observational science, and there are. For instance, based on the Bible, we'd expect to find evidence confirming an intelligence produced life. We'd expect to find evidence confirming after their kind. The Bible says God made kinds of animals and plants after their kind, implying each kind produces its own, not that one kind changes into another.
Fucking kind. We can never get away from this goddamn kind. Ken and Kent alike love their goddamn kinds. All right, well, when he gets to it, we'll do the whole... you guys have heard me do this a million times, but... Oh, God.
You'd expect to find evidence confirming a global flood of Noah's day, evidence confirming one race of humans, because we all go back to Adam and Eve. Biologically, that would mean there's one race. Evidence confirming the Tower of Babel, that God gave different languages. Evidence confirming a young universe. Now, I can't go through all of those, but a couple of them we'll look at briefly. After their kind, evidence confirming that. In the Creation Museum, we have a display featuring replicas, actually, of Darwin's finches. They're called Darwin's finches. Darwin collected finches from the Galapagos and took them back to England, and we see the different species, the different beak sizes here. And you know, from the specimens that Darwin obtained in the Galapagos, he actually pondered these things and how do you explain this? And in his notes, actually, he came up with this diagram here, a tree. And he actually said, I think. So he was talking about different species and maybe those species came from some common ancestor. Actually, when it comes to finches, we actually would agree as creationists that different finch species came from a common ancestor, but a finch is what they would have to come from.
The finch kind, right? Which is right. It's so nebulous. Anything can be a kind or not a kind, whatever they want. Things bringing forth of their kind. If kind means species, you're wrong. We have observed speciation events in terms of microorganisms and plants and even some animals. We have observed the generation of new species. We have observed it. There's your observational science for you, Ken. So if kind means species, you're wrong. And if kind means any other taxonomic classification other than species, then there's no problem because of nested hierarchies. You will get new species and new types of organisms that will always be of that kind. Right? We will, everything that evolves from any mammalian species will always be a mammal. And will always be a chordate, and will always be a eukaryote. Even if features are secondarily lost after the fact, right? They still belong in that clade. So whatever's in a clade, it's going to be in that clade indefinitely, even if it becomes wildly different. Right, that's like whales are mammals, right? They swim in the ocean. They don't look like other mammals that are walking around on land, but they're fucking mammals. I mean, there's tons and tons of examples of, incredible diversification, but because of these nested hierarchies, they're never going to be a different kind. So according to you, what you would call a kind. So this is it, right? This is all they can do is just go like, here's a little bit of evolution that we accept. Therefore, a lot of evolution can never happen. It's the same as saying a leaky faucet could fill a bucket, but it could never fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Well, yes, it fucking can. Just wait longer. Right? These mutations can accumulate over time, and and then they'll do the whole like, oh, but no, changes to the body plan can't happen, right? Stephen Meyer would say that. Well, yes, they fucking can. We understand Hox genes, and we've observed major changes in the body plan in like fruit flies and things like that. And we understand how these genes map and dictate how many limbs and where they are and things like that. So you absolutely can have significant changes to the body plan, especially given macromutations. So I don't know. That's enough for now.
But you see, Darwin wasn't just thinking about species. Darwin had a much bigger picture in mind. When you look at The Origin of Species and read that book, you'll find he made this statement: from such low and intermediate form, both animals and plants may have been developed, and if we admit this, we must likewise admit that all organic beings which have ever lived on this earth may be descended from some one primordial form. So he had in mind what we today know as an evolutionary tree of life, that all life has arisen from some primordial form. Now, when you consider the classification system, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, we would say, as creationists, and we have many creation scientists who've researched this, and for lots of reasons, I would say the kind in Genesis 1 really is more at the family level of classification. For instance, there's one dog kind, there's one cat kind.
I did not expect him to tether kind to a specific taxonomic classification. That's pretty fucking funny. Okay, elephant kind, dog kind. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of dogs, right? I mean, foxes, coyotes, and then felidae, right? So, look, you're telling me that that the house cat and the tiger, or the lion, or the jaguar, or ocelot, puma, whatever the fuck, that those gigantic cats and house cats evolved from a common ancestor basically instantly, right? That you had a pair of, I don't know what the fuck kind of cats you think are on the ark, right? Let's be charitable and say house cats, so they're nice and small, save some room, right? So how long did it take to go from house cats to lions and tigers? You wanna explain that for me, right? And because I know that with artificial selection we can make it happen pretty quickly, right? We got very small dogs and pretty big dogs over a couple thousand years, and increasingly over the past 500 years or however long. But that's very deliberate, very, selectively breeding, very aggressively selectively breeding. So how the fuck did that work for cats? And immediately, because there were tigers and lions and all these other cats in those historical times, right? We have accounts of all these animals. They were there. We interacted with them. We knew of them. So it happened basically instantly, right? Because we had house cats in those ancient times, or what we would today call house cats, right? Small cats. And we had lions and tigers too. So you're telling me that everything on the ark was two of a kind, was a family, right? We had two organisms that represent every single species in every single family, some of which have thousands of species, depending on which phylum we're looking at. And that all just happened in the snap of a finger. Well, my friend, I have to hand it to you. You believe in a hyper-rapid version of evolution that actually is impossible. You believe more in evolution than actual scientists. You believe in shit that can't actually happen. Incredible diversification that actually, really, truly cannot happen that rapidly. That's what you believe. You just outed yourself.
Even though you have different genera, different species. That would mean, by the way, you didn't need anywhere near the number of animals on the ark as people think. You wouldn't need all the species of dogs, just two. Not all the species of cats, just two. And you see, based on the biblical account there in Genesis 1, creationists have drawn up what they believe is a creation orchard. In other words, they're saying, look, there's great variation in the genetics of dogs and finches and so on. And so over time, particularly after Noah's flood, you'd expect, if there were two dogs, for instance, you could end up with different species of dogs because there's an incredible amount of variability in the genes of any creature. And
right. So there's a bunch of problems with this. So first of all, like we just said, the impossibility of that level of diversification happening basically instantly. But you're also, the only way that you can trick someone with this is if they have zero knowledge of paleontology. Right, that's all there is to it, because we have so many fossils and transitional species. So you can take the dog kind and the cat kind, right? You can take felines and canines, and through the fossil record, go back in time to get organisms that are very clearly the common ancestor of felines and canines. They resemble something kind of intermediate in terms of the morphologies of dogs and cats. So what the fuck are those? Planted by Satan, didn't really exist, right? You have to ignore the entire fossil record, because anything that you're putting up there in your orchard, we have specimens that very clearly delineate the common ancestry of those families or whatever clades that you think you're talking about. So take anything from birds and dinosaurs. Birds and dinosaurs is another great example. I mean, birds are dinosaurs, essentially, right? You go back in time, we have all these specimens. Everything in the animal kingdom today, and then all of the fruits of paleontological discovery, you refuse to take that into account. You do not look at the fossil record because you don't know what it is. You don't know that these fossils exist. You've never actually looked into it. The people who fall for your rhetoric sure as fuck don't know, right? But we live in the internet age, right? You could Google anything, right? Google common ancestor of most recent common ancestor of dogs and cats. Just Google that, right? And then you'll get a bunch of stuff, and you'll see the fossils, and then you'll see the artist renderings of what those organisms almost certainly looked like, and you'll see where they diverge, and then you'll see scientists with models, right? They have their phylogenetic tree set up for that section, and then new organisms get placed, right? Okay, this one here, and then there might be small adjustments, right? They might go, we thought this one was here, but we're going to pull that back a little bit because it seems like there was a diversification here, and then this organism going. So they're always like constantly slightly in flux. But the overall tree is there, and you cannot discount all of these fossils. You just can't. You really truly have to just be like, fossils are, I don't want to think about it. No, it's deception. That's not real. And that's not very scientific, is it, Ken? Right? That's observation. That's observational science, right? We can all agree on which fossils exist, except you can't because you refuse to acknowledge their existence. Yeah, orchard my ass.
So you'd expect these different species up here, but there's limits. Dogs will always be dogs, finches will always be finches. Now, as a creationist, I maintain that observational science actually confirms this model based on the Bible. For instance, take dogs. Okay, in a scientific paper dated January 2014, that's this year, scientists working at the University of California stated this: we provide several lines of evidence supporting a single origin for dogs and disfavoring alternative models in which dog lineages arise separately from geographically distinct wolf populations.
Nothing there contradicts evolutionary principles whatsoever, right? If everything on Earth descended from a singular common ancestor, then there's no problem with having nodes in the tree where branches arise, right? It's absolutely not a problem for all dogs to descend from common ancestors, or cats, or anything else that you want to talk about. This absolutely does not contradict evolution in any way. He's just presenting something and talking as though it confirms anything he believes. It doesn't.
And they put this diagram in the paper. By the way, that diagram is very, very similar to this diagram that creationists proposed based upon the creation account in Genesis.
The nub at the bottom, what's below that? Where do we go from below that, right? That just magically appeared? A dog just magically appeared, right? That's what you believe, is that God just went, I'm going to make a dog, boom, and it looks like a wolf, I guess, and then all the other shit came from that. Where there exists a lot of fossil evidence that goes below that nub, right? You have stem and crown species with every part of the tree here. You're just ignoring paleontology.
In other words, you have a common dog ancestor that gives rise to the different species of dogs, and that's exactly what we're saying here. Now, in the Creation Museum, we actually show the finches here, and you can see the finches with their different beaks beside dog skulls, different species of dogs. By the way, there's more variation in the dog skulls here than there are in these finches. Yet the dogs, well, that's never used as an example of evolution, but the finches are. Particularly in the public school textbooks, students are taught, see the changes that are occurring here? And here's another problem that...
They just do that because of the historical relevance, right? That's what Darwin was studying. That's one of the data points that gave him the idea. It's a brilliant insight, right? Just like, look at these beaks and how they correspond with local features such that it enhances their ability to feed. Right? It seems like there's a feedback mechanism there, that these beaks could have changed slowly over time to allow them to get sustenance more efficiently. That's brilliant. We can elucidate evolutionary principles in any set of living organisms, right? So what do you mean they don't even, like, you can do it with anything? Finches just, that's one of the things he looked at. I don't know what you're trying to do, man.
We've got. Not only has the word science been hijacked by secularists, I believe the word evolution has been hijacked by secularists. The word evolution has been hijacked using what I call a bait and switch. Let me explain to you. The word evolution is being used in public school textbooks, and we often see it in documentaries and so on. It's used for observable changes that we would agree with, and then used for unobservable changes, such as molecules to man. Let me explain to you what's really going on, because I was a science teacher in the public schools, and I know what the students were taught, and I check the public school textbooks anyway to know what they're taught. See, students are taught today, look, there's all these different animals, plants, but they're all part of this great big tree of life that goes back to some primordial form. And look, we see changes in finches, changes in dogs, and so on. Now, we don't deny the changes, you see that. You see different species of finches, different species of dogs, but then they put it all together in this evolutionary tree, but that's what you don't observe. You don't observe that. That's belief.
It's not belief, because you are omitting all of the extinct species that we have specimens for. You didn't draw them on there. Why is that? Kind of interesting, right? You like to pretend they don't exist, and then that transfers to your victims. They don't know that those exist either, and then they don't look for them. You can take any two. It works. It's more easily illustrated if they're relatively related. So humans and chimps and bonobos, right? Chimps and bonobos are our closest relatives to humans. Biological anthropology is an entire field of study that looks at all of these specimens, these hominid specimens that stem from, the closest, the most recent common ancestor between humans and then chimps and bonobos, which is, I don't remember, 5 to 7 million, something. No, might be longer than that. I forget exactly what it is. But so then you have all of these hominid species. So where are those? Where are those on your diagram there? Because right now this is very misleading, right? You've got chimps and you've got humans, and you're just saying, well, they think that they blah blah blah. Where's the You're not showing any of the fucking evidence. You're not showing it. Right? You can look at diagrams that show all of the dozens of species, all the dozens of hominid species that we have, and the very gradual morphological change stemming from something that's very clearly a common ancestor between humans and chimps, and then the divergence. And you can do that with any two organisms. Obviously, the more distantly related, the harder it's going to be. You can still do it with humans and jellyfish, but the divergence is going to be, half a billion years ago. It's going to be a long, long, long time ago where those phyla, where Cnidaria diverged from what would that be? I mean, that's Nephrozoa, and that divergence is a long, long time ago. So the longer ago the divergence, the more dissimilar the forms, usually. Not always, but usually. But we know so much about paleontology at this point that you really truly can do that, and especially now in the age of the internet, you can Google just blank common ancestor with blank most recent common ancestor and just look at it, right? You pick any two mammalian species, pick any two vertebrate species, and you can look at it, and you can see the very, very clear spectrum, the very gradual morphological change that is very clearly delineated by these ancestral forms, these extinct forms. You don't show them. You don't want to believe that they exist, and you train your victims to never look for them or wonder whether they exist or not. They do. Sorry. I've mentioned this many times, but I really, if anybody works in evolutionary biology, I would really love to collaborate on a project that I think would be extremely useful. I don't know how realistic this would be, but somebody has to work on a graphic, and it would probably have to be interactive or something, but it has to be a completely filled in tree of life. It has to be something where all of the several million, and I mean, we can limit it to the animal kingdom. We don't have to do microorganisms and things like that, but just the animal kingdom from, Porifera, sponges and cnidarians and those earliest animal clades, and then going all the way through all the other animals. It has to be something interactive where we can take any extant species and go back on a branch and see all of the ancestral forms, all of the fossils that we have from the fossil record, and really just see everything, such that that gradual morphological change becomes very visible and easy to grasp. I think that would help a lot of creationists snap out of it, because all they do is look at shit like this. They're like, chimp and a human, what is going to give birth to those two things? That doesn't make any sense. Well, if you look at it, right? You have to know what all these species are, and you only learn that if you're in like a college anthropology or paleontology course. You don't, or unless you voraciously search for it. But I think that I would love to collaborate with anybody who seriously wants to make that kind of a thing, because it would just be so undeniable. Like, you could zoom in on two branches and just go, oh wow, like look at those forms, look at the common ancestor, how it seems morphologically intermediate between these two extant forms, and then look at all of these species on the two branches that very, very gradually yield what we see today. I mean, that makes sense, right? It makes as much sense as he is admitting the Darwin's finches and the different dogs and different cats. It makes precisely that much amount of sense. It's just has already happened. Which, by the way, is the same thing for him with the dogs and the cats too. That also has already happened and he didn't observe it. But he accepts it because he thinks that he's conceding a small amount of evolution, right? What he would call microevolution, and denying what he would call macroevolution. But if you really see all those forms, it becomes hard to deny. So, yeah, someone get at me. Let's make that thing.
There. That's their historical science that I would say was wrong. But what you do observe different species of dogs, different species of finches, but then there are limits, and you don't see one kind changing into another. Actually, we're told that...
Yeah, you don't see one kind changing into another, so you've already defined kind as a family, so yes, you don't see a canine morphing into a feline. Right? That's not how evolution works. This is another straw man, is like the idea, and Kent Hovind does this all the time, and I know you all love my Kent Hovind impression, so I'll do it for you. Why doesn't a whale give birth to a pine tree? I feel like one day I should just do a whole video in his voice or something. I think that would appease a lot of you. I get a lot of compliments on that. But they all do that, right? They want you to believe that what evolution suggests is that one extant species should produce another extant species. No, it's all these ancestral forms that diverged and produce what we have today. And all of the forms that we have in the past, it's not a stretch, right? You can very clearly see. I don't need to repeat myself, but it's a very gradual gradient of morphological change in every case.
If you teach creation in the public schools, that's teaching religion. If you teach evolution, that's science. And I'm going to say, wait a minute. Actually, the creation model here, based upon the Bible, observational science confirms this. This is what you observe. You don't observe this tree. Actually, it's the public school textbooks that are teaching a belief, imposing it on students, and they need to be teaching them observational science to understand the reality of what's happening. Now, what we found is that public school textbooks present the evolutionary tree as science, but reject the creation orchard as religion. But observational science confirms the creation orchard. So public school textbooks are rejecting observational science and imposing a naturalistic religion on students. The word evolution has been hijacked using a bait and switch to indoctrinate students to accept evolutionary belief as observational science.
Science is doing the indoctrinating, not religion, right? It's like every accusation is a confession with these guys.
Introduce you to another scientist, Richard Lenski, Michigan State University. He's a great scientist. He's known for culturing E. coli in the lab. And he found there were some E. coli that actually seemed to develop the ability to grow on substrate, on citrate in the substrate. But Richard Lenski is here mentioned in this book, and it's called Evolution in the Lab. So the ability to grow on citrate is said to be evolution. And there are those that say, hey, this is against the creationists. For instance, Jerry Coyne from University of Chicago says, Lenski's experiment is also yet another poke in the eye for anti-evolutionists. He says the thing I like most is that it says you can get these complex traits evolving by a combination of unlikely events. But is it a poke in the eye for anti-evolutionists? Is it really seeing complex traits evolving? What does it...
Yes, it is. And in particular, this the citrate metabolism is an example that completely debunks Michael Behe's irreducible complexity. So I talk about this in my Michael Behe video in the Discovery Institute playlist, and they brought out all kinds of pageantry to try to defend irreducible complexity and claim that it is not an example of irreducible complexity. And in doing so, they had to just flat out lie about the genetic changes that were exhibited by the strain that developed this ability, because it involved a transposed gene, right? A gene, either a translocation of a gene, or I don't remember if a promoter was translocated, so you had a de novo gene. It was one of the two, but then on top of that, there were at least 2 point mutations that were unrelated to that. I don't remember the exact specifics, but if you want to check out my Michael Behe video, I do go over that. I believe it was the Michael Behe one. It might have been the one. It might have been that, and then the one rebutting whichever DI stooge was tasked the damage control for my Behe video, which I think it was McLatchy. That guy sucks. So yeah, no, this is against the intelligent design guys who do a much better job than Ken, although ultimately it's still pseudoscience and rhetoric and pageantry and lies, quite frankly, nothing but lies. But yeah, we're talking about a feature, all right, the development of a new complex trait, right? It can metabolize a new substrate. Yeah, and so all they can do is pretend it's not real or it didn't happen, or just go the cheap route and go, well, but is it still bacteria? It didn't turn into a triceratops, right? So no evolution. Either way, very stupid.
Mean that some of these bacteria are able to grow on citrate. Let me introduce you to another biblical creationist who is a scientist.
Hi, my name is Dr. Andrew Fabich. I got my PhD from the University of Oklahoma in microbiology. I teach at Liberty University, and I do research on E. coli in the intestine. I've published in secular journals from the American Society for Microbiology, including infection immunity and applied environmental microbiology, as well as several others. My work has been cited even the past year in the journals Nature, Science Translational Medicine, Public Library of Science, Public Library of Science Genetics. It's cited regularly in those journals.
Get to the fucking point. Okay, I'm a real scientist. We get it.
And while I was taught nothing but evolution, I don't accept that position, and I do my research from a creation perspective. When I look at the evidence that people cite of E. coli supposedly evolving over 30 years, over 30,000 generations in the lab, and people say that it is now able to grow on citrate. I don't deny that it grows on citrate, but it's not any kind of new information. The information's already there, and it's just a switch that gets turned on and off.
False. You are lying. You are flat out lying. Again, I don't remember if it was a transposed gene or if a promoter, if it was a de novo gene, and then additional point mutations. It's what would be an irreducibly complex trait. It simply is. He is just lying. When he says no new information, there was a switch. What are you talking about? No new information, right? When you have changes to the genome, that's new information. No new information, like it's not like a brand new base. It's still ACGT. Yeah, no shit. No, it's complete. Excuse me. It's completely new. It's a completely new trait derived from new genetic information. Period. He is lying.
That's what they reported in there. There's nothing new.
See, students need to be told what's really going on here. Certainly there's change, but it's not change necessary for molecules to man. Now, we could look at other predictions. What about evidence confirming one race? Well, when we look at the human population, we see lots of differences, But based on Darwin's ideas of human evolution as presented in The Descent of Man, I mean, Darwin did teach in The Descent of Man there are lower races and higher races. Would you believe that back in the 1900s, one of the most popular biology textbooks used in the public schools in America taught this? At the present time, there exist upon Earth 5 races or varieties of man, and finally the highest type of all, the Caucasians, represented by the civilized white inhabitants of Europe and America. Can you imagine if that was in the public schools today?
People used to be way more racist, therefore science is wrong. That's the argument. Fucking ridiculous.
And yet, that's what was taught, but it was based on Darwin's ideas that are wrong. You have a wrong foundation. You're going to have a wrong worldview. Now,
no, it's like this is all they have is nitpick the status of evolutionary biology from 150 years ago, and then neglect to discuss what we know today, right? It's every time. Darwin said this, Darwin said that. Darwin was an amazing scientist that came up with this incredible paradigm, and it would be fucking unrecognizable to him today. He would have no idea what's going on. We're so far beyond this. Like, Darwinist is not a real word. Nobody in evolutionary biology is a Darwinist. That doesn't mean anything. It's not applicable to the current status of evolutionary biology. And pointing at things that Darwin was ostensibly wrong about does not discredit evolutionary biology today. Sciences grow and change, and we add new layers, newer understanding. This is all they have every time.
Had they started from the Bible and from the creation account in the Bible, what does it teach? Well, we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. We go through the Tower of Babel, different languages, so different people groups formed, distinct characteristics, but we'd say, you know what, that means there's biologically only one race of humans.
Yeah, and everyone would be inbred as fuck. You can't explain that. Everybody comes from 2 people not once but twice, and we're not all inbred as hell. That disproves you at face value. You cannot get the genetic variation that exists in the global human population today from 2 people a couple thousand years ago. It is literally impossible. Case closed.
Well, I mentioned Dr. Venter before, and he was a researcher with the Human Genome Project, and you'll remember in the year 2000, this was headline news, and what we read was this: they had put together a draft of the entire sequence of the human genome and unanimously declared there is only one race, the human race. Wow, who would have guessed? But you see, there we have observational science confirming the creation account, not confirming at all Darwin's ideas. Now, there's much more that could be said on each of these topics. Obviously, you can't do that in a short time like this, and you could do a lot more research. I suggest you visit our website at Answers in Genesis for a lot more information. So, the debate topic, is creation a viable model of origins in today's scientific era? I said we need to define the terms, and particularly the term science and the term evolution, and I believe we need to understand how they're being used to impose an anti-God religion on generations of unsuspecting students. You see, I keep emphasizing we do.
It's so like this, the fucking persecution complex, and they're brainwashing kids to be anti-God. You can believe in God and accept science. It is absolutely possible. It's even possible to be a Christian and accept science. You just can't be a Bible-thumping fundamentalist. You can't be a biblical literalist and be a rational, science-minded person. You can't. That is incompatible. But you can be what you would call, I guess, a progressive Christian, right? You can be someone that enjoys Scripture as allegory, enjoys church for like a social aspect and to commune with like a personal spirituality, and enjoys like the cultural heritage of a people, and believe in God, and then just accept all of science and not impose some kind of Christian morality on the rest of society. It is very possible. In fact, probably, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that there are more Christians like that than like you, Ken. So something to strive for, I think.
You need to understand the difference between experimental or observational science and historical science. And you know what? The secularists don't like me doing this because they don't want to admit that there's a belief aspect to what they're saying. And
because there isn't. Science is antithetical to blind faith. That is what you have. You are trying to level the playing field by bringing science down to your level, to the level of blind faith. There's no distinction between historical and observational science. It's all observation based, and it's all based on the same principles. You are science illiterate.
there is, and they can't get away from it. Let me illustrate this with a statement from Bill Nye.
You can show the Earth is not flat. You can show the Earth is not 10,000 years old.
By the way, I agree. You can show the Earth is not flat. There's a video from the Galileo spacecraft showing the Earth, and speeded up, of course, but spinning. You can see it's a sphere. You can observe that.
Hey, Ken, did we think that the Earth was a sphere only once we got that footage? Or did we know that it's a sphere before that? Like way fucking before that? Like 2,500 goddamn years before that? Was it basically the first thing that we figured out as humans? Was that the Earth is a sphere? And what was that based on, right? It was based on observations, you're pretending that we need to see the Earth from space. So you're basically like a flat earther right now, kind of admitting that the idea that we need to see the Earth from space to know its shape. No, we make observations and we generate models, right? So we look at the celestial sphere. We look at the rotation of the night sky, right? The stars that are going counterclockwise around the north celestial pole and going clockwise around the south celestial pole. We see constellations appear and others disappear as we change our latitude. We take all of these disparate observations, land-based, sky-based, all of these disparate observations, and we construct a singular model, a spherical Earth that explains and correlates all of those observations and then makes predictions, right? It makes predictions about, well, okay, if I go to this latitude, I should see this star, or if at this time in a month we'll see this thing again, right? It makes these quantifiable predictions. That's how science works. So you are completely self-owning here on multiple levels, and you don't even know it.
You can't observe the age of the Earth. You don't see that. You see, again, I emphasize there's a big difference between historical science, talking about the past, and observational science, talking about the present. And I believe what's happening is this, that students are being indoctrinated by the confusion of terms, the hijacking of the word science and the hijacking of the word evolution in a bait and switch. Let me illustrate further with this video clip, because here I assert that Bill Nye is equating observational science with historical science. And I also say it's not a mystery when you understand the difference.
Apparently, people with these deeply held religious beliefs, they embrace that whole literal interpretation of the Bible as written in English as a worldview. And at the same time, they accept aspirin, antibiotic drugs, airplanes, but they're able to hold these two worldviews. And this is a mystery.
Actually, I suggest to you it's not a mystery. You see, when I'm talking about antibiotics, aspirin, smoke detectors, jet planes, that's Ken Ham, the observational science bloke. I'm an Australian. We call guys blokes, okay? But when you're talking about creation in thousands of years or the age of the Earth, that's Ken Ham, the historical science bloke. I'm willing to admit that. Now, when Bill Nye's talking about aspirin, antibiotics, jet planes, smoke detectors, he does a great job at that. I used to enjoy watching him on TV too. That's Bill Nye, the observational science guy. But when he's talking about evolution in millions of years, I'm challenging him that that's Bill Nye, the historical science guy. And I challenge the evolutionists to admit the belief aspects of their particular worldview. Now, at the Creation Museum, we're only too willing to admit our beliefs based upon the Bible, but we also teach people the difference between beliefs and what one can actually observe and experiment with in the present. I believe we're teaching people to think critically and to think in the right terms about science. I believe it's the creationists that should be educating the kids out there, because we're teaching them the right way to think. we admit our origins of historical science is based upon the Bible, but I'm just challenging evolutionists to admit the belief aspects of evolution and be upfront about the difference here. As I said, I'm only too willing to admit my historical science based on the Bible.
You're admitting that your science is based on the Bible, which makes it religion and not science. We already talked about this, but it bears repeating. You cannot say that your science is based on the Bible. That is a fucking oxymoron. There is no historical science. It's all observation-based. Anything that is extrapolated into the past is based on observations and the very clear logical consistency of the universe. There's no basis for thinking that the natural world worked differently in other times than the present. I really hope we're wrapping this up here.
And let me further go on and define the term creation as we use it. By creation, we mean, here at Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum, we mean the account based on the Bible. Yes, I take Genesis as literal history, as Jesus did. And here at the Creation Museum, we walk people through that history. We walk them through creation, a perfect creation. God made Adam and Eve, land animal kind, sea creatures, and so on. And then sin and death entered the world, so there was no death before sin. That means, how can you have billions of dead things before man sinned? And then the catastrophe of Noah's flood. If there was a global flood, you'd expect to find billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. Had to say that because a lot of our supporters would want me to. And what do you find? Billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. Confusion, the Tower of Babel. God gave different languages, so you get different people groups. So this is the geological, astronomical, anthropological, biological history as recorded in the Bible. So this is concerning what happened in the past that explains the present.
Yeah, and you're refusing to acknowledge how poorly what you're saying predicts what we actually see. Right, you're talking about this catastrophe and everything getting buried in rock layers. Rock doesn't form that fast, and how the fuck did it sort so perfectly that it immaculately aligns with the predictions of evolutionary biology, and real geology, the geology of an old Earth? Why does it so perfectly conform to those expectations? In order to pretend that they don't, you have to lie. Whether you outright lie or lie by omission by not bringing up any of these fossilized transitional forms that we have, or by just not talking about geological processes properly. It doesn't fit, does not match what you believe. It really aggressively, violently does not match what you believe. It very rigidly matches what the natural sciences believe. Which is why scientists operate under the under that worldview that they do, and it just completely all you have is deflection, lies, science denial. That's all you've got.
And then, of course, that God's Son stepped into history to be Jesus Christ, the God-man, to die on the cross, be raised from the dead, and one day there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth to come. And not only is this an understanding of history to explain the geology, biology, astronomy, and so on, to connect the present to the past, but it's also a foundation for our whole worldview. For instance, in Matthew 19, when Jesus was asked about marriage, he said, "Have you not read? He which made the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they'll be one flesh." He quoted from Genesis as literal history, Genesis 1 and 2. God invented marriage, by the way. That's where marriage comes from, and it's to be a man and a woman.
Okay, getting political here. Only a man and a woman can get married because this stupid story says so.
And not only marriage, ultimately, every single biblical doctrine of theology, directly or indirectly, is founded in Genesis. Why is there sin in the world? Genesis. Why is there death? Genesis. Why do we wear clothes? Genesis. Why did Jesus die on a cross? Genesis. It's a very important book. It's foundational to all Christian doctrine. And you see, when we look at that, what I call the 7 C's of history that we walk people through here at the museum, think about how it all connects together. A perfect creation, it'll be perfect again in the future. Sin and death entered the world. That's why God's Son died on the cross, and to conquer death and offer a free gift of salvation. The flood of Noah's day, a reminder that the flood was a judgment because of man's wickedness, but at the same time a message of God's grace and salvation, as Noah and his family had to go through a door to be saved, so we need to go through a door to be saved. Jesus Christ said, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he'll be saved.
Yeah, the transformation from the petty, vindictive, genocidal God of the Old Testament to the all-loving, super cool, super dope New Testament God. It's like, don't worry, I'm going to send myself, I'm going to sacrifice myself to save you from myself and all the things that I would arbitrarily do to you because I want to. God damn it, man. It's just like, I'm sorry. It's all so dumb. But it's a cute diagram. It made a little C and you put some arrows on there, so that's fun for everybody.
And we make no apology about the fact that what we're on about is this. If you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart God has raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. Now, as soon as I say that, people say, see, if you allow creation in schools, for instance, if you allow students to even hear about it, this is religion. You know, let me illustrate this, talking about a recent battle in Texas over textbooks in the public school. A newspaper report said this: textbook and classroom curriculum battles have long ranged in Texas, pitting creationists, those who see God's hand in the creation of the universe, against academics. Stop right there. Notice, creationists, academics. Creationists can't be academics. Creationists can't be scientists. See?
There's almost none. There's almost none. I'm sorry. It's just how it is, dude. Creationists are almost entirely Bible-thumping preachers like yourself. A couple finally like the guy did stuff with MRI, great. What does that have to do with creationism? Nothing, right? So he just managed to figure out how to do something while holding this incredibly unscientific view. He did something with engineering, great, good for him. Has nothing to do with it.
It's the way things are worded out there. It's an indoctrination that's going on. Who worry about religious and political ideology trumping scientific fact. Wait a minute, what do they mean by science? You're talking about what you observe, or you're talking about your beliefs about the past? Now, Kathy Miller is the president of the Texas Freedom Network, and she's vocally spoken out. She's spoken out about this textbook battle there in Texas. And the mission statement of the organisation she's president of says, the Texas Freedom Network advances a mainstream agenda of religious freedom and individual liberties to counter the religious right. Religious freedom, individual liberties. And then she makes this statement. Science education, what does she mean by science, should be based on mainstream science education, not on personal ideological beliefs of unqualified reviewers. Wait a minute, they want religious liberty and not personal ideological beliefs? I assert this. Public school textbooks are using the same word science for observational and historical science. They arbitrarily define science as naturalism and outlaw the supernatural. They present molecules to man evolution as fact, and they're imposing the religion of naturalism on generations of students.
Right, and you're an idiot that is pretending science is religion so that you can violate the separation of church and state. This is where it gets dangerous. This is where it becomes a big fuck you. Right? You can go to your church and you can spew all this bullshit, and if people fall for it and they want to go to your church, that's their business. The minute you start trying to change the textbooks, fuck you. The minute you start trying to change the laws, fuck you. You're trying to tell people who can get married and who can get an abortion and all this other shit, fuck you. Right? Freedom of religion means freedom from your religion. Okay? And you pretending that your religion is science and pretending that science is religion does not make either of those things true. So you have your special little book, you have your special little story, and you, in your own home and in your own church, you get to believe that. You totally do. You totally get to believe ridiculous things. That's fine. It does not become of federal concern. It does not become imposed upon the rest of us. Ever. And we will fight to the death about this, right? You can't do it. Yeah, no, this is the real battle, right? When people say, why would you debate this? Why would you try to commit? This is why. And it's happening today, right? We have Christian nationalists that are desperately trying to take over the entire government, and they are succeeding to an extent. And it could get a lot worse. Things get a lot worse.
imposing their ideology on the students, that everything's explained by natural processes. That is a religion. What does she mean by religious liberty? They tolerate their religion. See, the battle is really about authority. It's more than just science or evolution or creation. It's about who is the authority in this world, man or God. If you start with naturalism, then what about morals? Who decides right and wrong? Well, it's subjective. Marriage, well, whatever you want it to be.
Yes, morals are what we decide. There are no absolute morals. And yes, marriage is whatever the fuck we say it is because it's some shit that we invented. Okay? I'm sorry. We invented marriage. And honestly, initially to turn women into property. Right. It's like if some guy's gonna trade his daughter for some fucking goats or some shit, well, what if she runs away? Well, here's a piece of paper that says that you own her, so you can have her, and that's your property now, and I'll take your goats, and we're all good. Good to go. Marriage has historically been about the subjugation of women and little else. So since we invented it, it can be whatever the fuck we want. And if we decide in a modern context that it's actually about love, then whoever the fuck loves each other can get married. And you can cry about it. You can cry about it forever. Nobody cares. It doesn't affect you. You bigot. Euthanasia. Like you give a shit about people killing themselves. Sanctity of life, biblical marriage, moral absolutes. Yeah, it's about this different, right? Your God isn't real, right? I can't say that about any God in general. But the God as the God that fundamentalist Christians believe in, the omnipotent, omniscient, all-loving deity that tortures people eternally for things that he decided that they would do before they even existed, is not real. That is completely incompatible with logic. The God that Ken believes in objectively is not real. So this attempt at constructing moral absolutes and some kind of a rigid definition of what marriage should be or anything else like that he's then trying to impose on greater society is baseless, and he can go fuck himself. Sorry. And by the way, this is always where it goes, right? There's always this kind of social manipulation. It is not about we should be teaching the truth or blah, blah. No, it's always just trying to impinge on civil rights. That's it. They're always aiming for this. And Project 2025 is a real thing, and it's all over the Trump administration, and they want this shit too. They want it. They want to criminalize abortion. They want to criminalize miscarriage. They want to do all kinds of nasty things, and we have to fight them.
Rid of old people. I mean, why not? I mean, they're just animals. They're costing us a lot of money. Abortion, get rid of spare cats, get rid of spare kids. We're all animals. But if you start from God's word, there are moral absolutes. God decides right and wrong. Marriage, one man and one woman. Sanctity of life. We care for old people. They're made in the image of God. Life begins at fertilization, so abortion is killing a human being. We do see the collapse of Christian morality in our culture and increasing moral relativism because generations of kids are being taught the religion of naturalism and that the Bible can't be trusted.
Yes, we are free from highly restrictive, regressive, fundamentalist religious doctrine, which is the single greatest thing that has ever happened in human civilization. I don't want to go back. And if you're going to try to drag us there, you can fuck yourself.
And so again, I say, creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era. You know what? I'm a science teacher. I want to see kids taught science. I love science. I want to see more Dr. Demadians in the world. You know, if we teach them the whole universe is a result of natural processes and not designed by a creator God, they might be looking in the wrong places or have the wrong idea when they're looking at the creation in regard to how you develop technology, because if they look on it as just random processes, that could totally influence the way they think. If
they don't believe in the Christian God, they might do science not good. Fuck you, Ken.
They understand it was a perfect world marred by sin. That could have a great effect on how they then look for overcoming diseases and problems in the world. I want children to be taught the right foundation, that there's a God who created them, who loves them, who died on the cross for them, and that they're special. They're made in the image of God.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ham. We can applaud Mr. Ham's presentation.
Okay. I'm gonna stop there. Yeah, it's look. Okay, if you guys want me to finish this, leave some comments here. I don't. I guess it would be interesting to see what Bill says here. But yeah, that was, I mean, none of that was a surprise. It's all of this like observational versus historical science, and religion is science because I say so, and science is religion because I say so. That's it. That's all it ever is with these preachers, and it's all it's ever going to be. They have no ability to come up with a new playbook, so that's it. Yeah, anyway. I'm going to stop there because it's late and I'm tired, but let me know if you want to see more of this. Otherwise, I've got some other stuff that I want to react to and plenty more really good debunks coming as well. So that's it for now. I'll see you next time.